Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Nicholson. Are you ready?
Indeed, I am, Chair.
We have not started with Colonel Deploy previously, eh?
No, we have not.
We have not started.
Chair.
Okay, all right. Do you want to just tell us what his evidence will connect to, just so that everybody understands where we are moving to now?
Indeed, Chair. Chair, the witness I'm calling is Petrus Johannes Duploy. He's a colonel in the Hawks. He is going to testify. He's the investigating officer in the Intaka matters, which had been testified about by Mr. Trevor White from PwC. Mr. Trevor White dealt with the factual issues. The Colonel Deploy is going to deal with the issues, will corroborate some of those issues, and will also deal with the issues as his interaction with the National Prosecuting Authority and how it came about that this matter was withdrawn.
Mr. White's evidence related to, if I recall correctly, 2 contracts, maybe more. One contract relating to the department which had as its political head at the time Mr. Mabuya Kulu in KwaZulu-Natal, and the Department of Health when it had Ms. Konyeni as its political head. Was it 2 contracts, or was it those were 2 separate contracts, and then there was the Amigo case?
There's 2 separate contracts and the Amigo case. That's correct, Chair.
2 separate contracts plus the Amigo case.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes, okay, all right. And he will give evidence in regard to all 3, or only the 2 contracts, or only the Amigo case?
Only the Amigo case, Chair.
Okay.
The entire matters as well. The media dubbed it the Amigo matter.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready that he should be sworn in?
May the witness be sworn in?
Yes. Okay.
With the Chair's leave.
Okay.
Please state your full names for the record.
Petrus Johannes Deploy.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
I do.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Chair, the witness has prepared an affidavit. The affidavit is marked Exhibit RR5. With the Chair's leave, may the exhibit be handed in.
The rest of the documents in the lever arch file, are they simply annexed to his affidavit?
That is correct, Chair.
Are there other affidavits or statements that are not annexed to his affidavit in the file?
There is only one affidavit, and that is Colonel Deploy's affidavit in the file.
Okay, okay. Colonel Petrus Johannes Deploy's affidavit and its annexures are admitted and are marked as Exhibit RR5.
Yes, Chair. Colonel Deploy, have a look at page 1 of the documents in front of you. Can you identify the documents?
I do as a sworn affidavit for myself.
And does that affidavit go from pages 1 to 10?
That is correct.
And do the annexures thereafter to your affidavit, which is part of your affidavit, go from 11 to 130?
That's correct.
if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of each page, are those your initials?
That's correct, Chair.
And at page 11, is that the commission of oath certificate?
That's correct, Chair.
Do you confirm the contents of the affidavits are true and correct?
I do, Chair.
Well, at the bottom of each page, there appears to be two people who initialed. Is it you and the Commissioner of Oaths?
That's correct, Chair.
Yes, okay.
And the commissioner of oaths, both you and the commissioner of oaths have initialed the annexures as well.
That's correct, Chair.
Now, Colonel Deploy, where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed at Serious Corruption Unit, the DPCI Durban.
What is the TPCI?
Sorry, you'll just have to raise your voice, Colonel. Maybe the mic also bring it closer. Yeah. Yeah.
As I said, I'm currently employed at DPCI. Durban is the Director of Serious Offences. I'm currently the Provincial Coordinator for serious corruption cases.
What is the DPCI?
Director of Priority Crimes.
And it's also known as the Hawks.
That is correct, Chair.
How long have you been in the South African Police Services?
I've completed 36 years.
And can you take us through your career very briefly in the South African Police Services?
I joined the SABC in December of 1983. I have performed duties in a uniform section at in Johannesburg. I joined the detectives in 1991. I later became part of the what we call the Government Fraud Task Team that was formed in 1995. The main function of that task team was to look at government fraud in KZN. I subsequently performed duties in the Syndicate Fraud Unit, Commercial Branch, and then what we had is Anti-Corruption Task Team, or it's also known as the ACTT. And currently, I'm in the Serious Corruption Investigation Unit.
Okay. And what other qualifications do you have?
I've got a national diploma and I've did various courses in commercial work.
Currently, the units where you are working, what matters do you investigate?
We investigate matters that emanates from the PFMA, MFMA. We're looking at corruption, fraud, money laundering, racketeering, the private sector and in the public sector.
Okay. And do you only work with policemen in these units?
No, we have what we call the multidisciplinary approach that have other stakeholders. Our stakeholders are like forensic auditors, National Treasury, the NPA, asset forfeiture, to name some of them.
Colonel, if we can look at paragraph 7 at page 2, you refer to 3 police CAS numbers.
That is correct.
Do these CAS numbers refer to the Intaka matter?
That is correct.
And we've confirmed that you're the investigating officer of these matters.
That is correct, Chair. These cases are known to me as the main person being Dr. Savoy or his company Intaka. So they all relate to each other in terms of Dr. Savoy.
Okay. And starting at paragraph 7.1, who was the complainant in that matter?
This case was registered after Dr. Savoy himself came forward and gave information to the then commercial branch in 2009.
So we have the unusual situation where Dr. Savoy is both the complainant and the suspect, and the accused.
That is correct, Chair. At the time, the Scorpions and the commercial branch in SABC were not one unit. It was before the disbandment of Scorpions. So what happened is Dr. Savoy have reported the matter. We then registered the case and we started investigating. The Scorpions on their side have then done a raid in Northern Cape and Cape Town, where they have seized Dr. Savoy's stuff. So when we merged, Colonel Jones, that was the main person in Scorpions dealing with that issue, then became my commander. He's a full colonel, I was lieutenant colonel. So, he then named this investigation, we call it Crisscross, Project Crisscross at the time, although the press branded this whole thing as the Amigos. So, from 1538, the initial case that Savoy reported, we then had the other cases as the investigation progressed, and we had forensic auditors on board at Pricewaterhouse, or Mr. Trevor White, that assisted us with those 3 investigations.
Did Mr. Trevor White testify about these 3 case numbers?
Yes, he did.
At paragraph 11, at page 3, you mention a memo from the NPA. That memo is at page 12. Can we go there?
That is correct, Chair. This memo is a letter that Advocate Anton Steinberg, at some stage he was the prosecutor in this matter before he went to The Hague. He was at that stage a deputy director of the NPA. So he perused, he was part of the organized crime division in Durban. So what happened is he perused the matter with Apples, Bos and Rietvlei. That is PM Burke has 66 of 1/2010 to do with the water purification plants, 10 million for the 2 hospitals. And then after he perused the docket, it's sort of a decision that he made that we're going to proceed, and then he wrote this letter to me. I then replied to this letter as well. In this letter, he says in paragraph, if just take you to paragraph 2, he said, having perused the above mentioned docket, I'm satisfied that a prima facie case of fraud, alternatively conspiracy to commit fraud, has been made out in respect of the following individuals. He then names 7 individuals. Now the individuals there will be the Intaka portion of it, and then the Department of Health officials with the HOD, Dr. Nyembezi of the Department of Health. At this stage, although we knew of the other issues in terms of the Oxytaka, where Professor Mbele was involved, this was the first portion that was completed. So we were investigating it simultaneously in terms of that. So he basically was happy, and he predicted at that stage that once this whole thing is done, we will be able to do racketeering or racketeering prosecution in terms of the Intaka matter.
Okay, if we can just go to the next page, it's the second paragraph from the top. If we can just read that out.
He said, as discussed at our previous meetings in connection with this project, there appears to be a good prospect of charging most, if not all, of the above with racketeering. But this will be dependent upon the finalization of investigation in respect of the remaining matters. In particular, the Department of Health Oxytaka matter and the KZN Department Local Government Traditional Affairs acquisition of Wataka units. The Wataka is the water purification plant from Intaka. So in there, he mentioned the 3 cases because he was aware of all 3 cases. But the first case that was ready was this 626 with the Apple Boss and Rietvlei issue.
And he also alludes to a racketeering charge sheet at the end of the day.
Yes, that was his opinion. I think that is what we were working towards.
Okay. So you've mentioned that the author of this document was Advocate Steinberg at page 15. If we can just have a look at that.
That is correct. He was a Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Organized Crime Division, Durban.
And at page 12, what is the date of the memo?
June 2010, Chair.
Okay. Can you just briefly explain what was the purpose of this memo?
The purpose of this memo is basically to say we are ready to prosecute. I think after this memo, they start drafting charge sheets in terms of to place this matter on the roll. And he then also sort of gave me...
I'm sorry. I thought what you were looking at just now was a letter. Now you're talking about a memo. Where is the memo?
The document he's referring to is the memo. I apologize, Chair. At page 12 is the memo.
That's a letter, not a memo. Not at least what I've got on page 12.
That is correct.
That's a letter written by Advocate Steinberg to Colonel Duploy.
That's correct. It is a letter. I apologize.
Okay.
These are
So
normally
just
written
wanted
in
to
a memo
make sure
format.
that we are talking about the same document. It's a letter.
That's
As I see, it's written in the format of a letter, and I don't see anything that says memo. Yeah, okay. We are talking about the same thing, but it's a letter.
Indeed, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
That is correct, Chair. It's a letter that Advocate Steinberg wrote. He basically told me that I have to do certain things, and he said he's basically ready to proceed with the Oxytocos, Peter Marisbeck 626.
Okay. And he refers to Project Crisscross. Where does that come from?
As I said, that is what Colonel Jones from the Scorpions, that when we amalgamated, he called it crisscross.
Did you reply to this memorandum?
Chair, I did reply to this memorandum.
And is that a
To this letter.
To this letter, I apologize, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. To the letter, Chair, sorry.
But it's counsel who's confusing you,
Yes.
Kenneth. So you are not to blame. Yes.
Did you reply to this letter? And is the reply at page 17?
That is correct, Chair. I wrote a letter to Advocate Steinberg and also to my provincial commander at that stage, Commercial Commandant Brigadier Latergan. And in this letter, I basically informed him and the Provincial Commissioner's Office of give more detail about what this was about, and also where I note the instructions that he have given me. Because paragraph 6 of that letter, I said, I've taken note of your queries with regards to the following matters. And then I mentioned it there. I also then, for sake of that we have record, that he have record of this matter, if you go to paragraph 7, I've made an index in terms of what was the contents of the docket at this stage. So it was both, I hear what you're saying, I will comply, but for record keeping, this is what we're dealing with. When the investigations and the reports were finalized, the whole lot was then scanned when it came to give further particulars to the defense. So it was like 250,000 pages. So for the sake of the Advocate Steinberg, I just mentioned what was in the case, because this is Peter Marisbeck 626 contents, if I can say.
At paragraph 12, at page 3, you mentioned cases from the Northern Cape. Can you just explain that very briefly?
Chair, the Northern Cape, when the exhibits were seized from Dr. Savoy in Taka, and we looked at it, we realized that the Oxytocos and Wataka issue was also pertaining to the Northern Cape. They had a similar problem to us, but we only had one set of documents to work with. So we call it a Northern Cape leg and a KZN leg. And so when Mr. Trevor White prepared his reports, I got 5 reports, and I think they've got 4 reports. And I think he did 9 reports altogether for both provinces. When asset forfeiture was done, it was done for both of these provinces as one, because they could only take his money once. So that is where the Northern Cape played an important role in us. And also the exhibits that, or the evidence that we're going to use in KZN will also then have to be used in the Northern Cape.
Now, if we go to paragraph 13, you mentioned 5 forensic reports by PwC. PricewaterhouseCoopers.
That is correct, Chair. Just to mention, it's about 350 Leeward's files that we brought from Cape Town. For KZN, Mr. White prepared 5 forensic audit reports. Now, if you look at paragraph 13.1, Peter Maritzburg case 151 is to do with the oxytarkas, or the self-generating oxygen plants. Peter Maritzburg case 626 have the water purification plants for Department of Health, and Durban Central case 1538 had to do with the water purification for local government and traditional affairs. Then there was a report prepared specifically for Mrs. Peggy Nkonyeni, and that is why the case reference number is the same, because oxytarkas is 151, but it's a supplementary report in terms of her. If you go to paragraph 13.5, Peter Maritzburg case 151 is again, and that is to do with Professor Green Thompson, that was also at some stage the head of Department of Health in KZN, and it's also a supplementary report.
Hang on. I'm not sure where that is. I was thinking you are still talking about Colonel Duploy's response, but it doesn't have paragraph 13.
That's it.
So it can't be that response.
It's at page 3, paragraph 13 of the Colonel's affidavit.
Page 3.
Page 3, paragraph 13.
That is in his affidavit.
That is correct.
Oh, we moved from the letter. Okay. All right. Okay, continue.
So, Chair, there was in total 5 forensic reports, but it's pertaining to 3 case numbers. So in total 5 reports. 2 of those reports are supplementary reports. That was requested by the NPA.
If we go now to paragraph 14 and 15 of your affidavit at page 4, who was the lead prosecutor?
The lead prosecutor, after Advocate Steinberg left to The Hague, it became Advocate Nedele Dunya. He worked from the DPP's office in Pietermaritzburg. He reported to at that stage, the acting DPP Advocate Simpiwe Molocho.
Now you make the point that Advocate Mlocha was very hands-on. Why do you say so?
This is quite
I'm sorry, was what?
Was very hands-on.
Well, let him give the evidence. Yeah, tell us about Advocate Mlochwa as acting DPP in terms of matters that he had to deal with.
Chair, Advocate Molochwa had, I use the word hands-on because he played a big role in this matter. For instance, he was part of the meetings, he knew what was the evidence about. Although the lead prosecutors, Advocate Dunya, Advocate Molocha was on par with what's happening. And he signed all the warrants of arrest. When I arrested all the people to appear in court, it's his signature and not Advocate Dunya's signature. So he's the most senior at that stage in KZN to sign those warrants. So he was happy that everything was in order when he signed this.
Okay, let me continue.
At paragraphs 16 and 17 of your affidavits at page 4, you speak of arrest. 8 suspects were arrested, including Savoy.
That is correct, Chair. On 25th of August, that was when they initially were arrested for fraud, and the first appearance was for that, and then later on, the racketeering indictment and certificates were done. That was signed by Advocate Simelane, the NDPP.
And who signed the warrants of arrest?
That was Advocate Molochwa, the acting DPP.
Now, if we go to paragraphs 18 and 19 of your affidavit, which is at page 4 of the bundle.
Yes.
Was there a draft charge sheet?
Yes. If you look at my annexure PDP 3, what the prosecutors have done there wasn't a racketeering charge sheet, but when they placed these matters on the roll, they drafted the charge sheet for these two individuals specifically, and they would then forward it to us to see whether it is in line with what the evidence is. Now, if you go to Annexure PDP 3,
That's at page 24 of the bundle, Chair.
I've received this, and I've saved this on my computer. I've written with pen on top in 2011-07-04.
If we can just start.
This is a draft charge sheet that I received.
Okay. Continue.
And in this is the draft charge sheet for this matter, where these Maiken Baikulu and Peggy Nkuneni would then be placed on the roll, which would then later be converted into a racketeering matter. The charge sheet itself explains what the allegations against the two accusers.
At paragraph 20 of your affidavit, which is at page 4, you refer to a racketeering certificate.
That is correct, Chair. I just want to point out there's a typing error. Advocate Samalani was the NDPP. It wasn't the DPP. There should be an N before the D. Advocate Dunya would have, and I suppose Advocate Malocha would have made presentations to the NDPP, where have you, upon listening to them, issued the racketeering certificate and also approved the indictment for racketeering charges.
Let's go to page 40 of the bundle, which is Annexure PDP 4 of your affidavit.
Chair, this is the racketeering certificate that was signed on the 31st of July by Advocate Menzi Simelane. And in this, he agreed to prosecute 23 suspects, if I can call it. And it's listed here in terms of Section 2.4 of the Prevention of Organised Crime Act.
Is that certificate at pages 40 and 41?
That is correct. It's 2 pages.
And if you can just confirm at page 41, who signed the racketeering certificate?
That's Advocate Menzi Simelane, the national, at that stage, the National Director of Public Prosecutions.
Now, in your evidence so far, you have stated that no less than 3 senior prosecutors were of the view that the evidence suggested racketeering. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And these are Advocate Steinberg, Advocate Simelane, and Advocate Dunwa.
That is correct. But I believe Advocate Malocha also, with as acting DPP in KZN, also believe the same.
Okay. If we go to paragraphs 23 and 24 of your affidavit, which is at page 5 of the bundle, you state the matter was transferred to the High Court.
Mr. Nicholson, I would like his evidence to flow from him and for him to only look at the statement if he needs to refresh his memory. That's what I would like. I would like him to, because he probably knows what he deals with here. He has had this for quite some time on different topics. I know we say you lead him, but I would like him to give his evidence in a way that shows that he only looks at the documents when he needs to refresh his memory, but otherwise he can deal with the issues. Do you want to try that? So maybe not so much drawing his attention to any paragraph before he can talk about it, because there would be certain events. He got involved, did some investigation. There was Mr. White. At a certain stage, he dealt with Mr. Dunya and Mr. Mlodra. Over a certain period, this is what happened. After that, this is what happened. So that the evidence, as it unfolds, is seen as coming from him rather than just following the affidavit.
Indeed, Chair. I shall try. What became of the racketeering indictment or certificate?
Sorry, I didn't follow.
Do you know what became of the racketeering certificate?
It would be part of the High Court bundle of documents together with the indictment that goes with the certificate.
Let me rephrase that. Was the suspects or the accused ever indicted for racketeering?
Yes, they appeared. We have Judge McLaren, a retired judge. Chair, this is not a simple case. This is not. It's a complicated case. Like Mr. White have testified, it took him 3 days on a high level to explain to you more or less what just the KZN issue is. The NPA then thought, we can't go to a normal high court and that judge there have other work. So let's get a separate court with a retired judge. He was then appointed, Judge McLaren was appointed, and we were going to do the trial in a period of 3 months. So it was quite a voluminous, tedious thing that we had to do. The accused then...
Well, I don't want what you say to be understood in a manner which you probably don't mean. The fact that the case was going to be heard over a long period doesn't necessarily speak to its complexity. It might speak to the fact that there are many witnesses who need to be called, and there may be a lot of documentation, because a case can be complex even if it takes 2 days. So getting Judge McLaren, who I think was probably retired by then, would have been more for the fact that the case required a judge who was not going to be involved in other cases for the duration of that case. And a retired judge would therefore be most suitable because he would have the time.
Yes, Chair, maybe to just say it in a different way, if you look at racketeering charges and you have a trial, you don't want to have a week now and a week 6 months later. Because
yes.
Racketeering in its own right is not a simple thing.
Yes.
So, and it was a time issue to do with how many witnesses
yes.
going to be lead, how many documents can
yes.
be handed in.
Yes.
But the case was different in the sense that it wasn't a simple case.
Yes, no, but what I mean is you don't suggest, or do you suggest that those judges who are not retired could not handle it because it was complicated?
Any judge
That's
can
not
handle
what you are here.
No,
what you mean is it needed a judge who had time.
That's correct.
Yeah, and a retired judge would have time. Okay.
That's correct, Chair. And what happened is the accused all appeared in the, we took the case from the Pietermaritzburg Regional Court, and then they decided that Durban is going to be the best place to have it. So the High Court in Durban was then used. They appeared on the racketeering charges, and it was remanded for various times. But at the time when withdrawals was made in this case, it was in the High Court in front of the judge for, in terms of the racketeering charges that was put to the accused. It took a while to do this investigation. Chair, as I say, it's a lot of documents. National Treasury thought it kind in order to assist us. They spent over 100,000 Rand, get professional people that scanned all the evidence, the reports, the docket. So that is, and in my statement, paragraph 25, they typed 2,500 pages, which is actually 250,000 pages. So it wouldn't have been possible to make 23 sets of all of this. So it was scanned, National Treasury paid for it, and we only gave the accused a disc to say, there's the case. So it had its benefit for us, and then also we don't have to carry all those boxes around whenever we had a meeting to discuss something. I just want to... And during March 2012, we then received an invite to attend. Now, at that stage, as far as I'm concerned, the investigation was complete. We should now prepare for trial.
Yes.
So in 2012, Advocate Dunia then sent us an invite. And if I can just refer you to PDP 6, Annexure PDP 6.
That's
Yes.
at page 127 of the chair's bundle.
127.
127.
Okay.
And Chair, we were invited to a meeting. If you look at the invite, it's an email that was forwarded to myself, Trevor White, Colonel Jones, and then Advocate Malochas was CC. Advocate Dunia was the author of this email, and he invited us to a meeting that was to be held on the 23rd of March 2012, 20th floor, Southern Life Building. That's the NPA's building in Durban. And he says, which will be attended by the national head of SCCU and the national head of organized crime of the NPA. At that stage, the national head of the SCCU was Advocate Mugwebi, and Advocate Mossing was the head of organized crime. We looked at the invite, and they request me to do something, and I request Mr. Trevor White, our forensic auditor, to prepare documents. We didn't really know what this meeting was going to be about. I would say we didn't go properly prepared to the meeting in a sense that we knew exactly what was going to be discussed. So in this meeting, they requested me to make a summary of the investigating diary, a list of exhibits that was handed in from different government departments and change statements. Chair, remember at this stage, they already have everything. The whole docket was scanned. So there was nothing I can take to make them wiser. They already have it. The forensic auditor, Mr. White, would then had to do the flow of funds for Mbezi, Raumore analysis, and Taka flow of funds. Those things are already in the report. You don't have to ask for it separately if you can go and read it yourself.
If I may just ask, at the point of this meeting, were the five forensic reports that you have testified about, were they already completed?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Continue.
And Chair, what is, which I can't understand about this email, if you look at point 3, which doesn't make sense to me, it says Colonel Jones to submit a report on a mammogram case indicating, amongst other things, why the case was withdrawn and a complete docket. Now, Chair, just to enlighten you, this was the case against Peggy Nkonyeni and Makwanazi, which also now appear in my matter. There was a Maritzburg Department of Health to do with a mammogram machine. Advocate Hein van der Merwe was the prosecutor. Colonel Jones was the investigating officer. I think it was still in the days of the Scorpions. Why they want to see this docket, which got nothing with Intaka, I don't know. On the day itself, we did not discuss point number 3. Yes. I don't know why Advocate Dunia have put this in the letter. It doesn't make sense. Him being my prosecutor, it doesn't make sense. I'm not sure if he was told to put it there. I don't know. But as far as I know, that all the above mentioned items, Advocate Dunia had full knowledge of it. He had it on a disk. It was available for anybody to look at it.
Would this be an indication maybe that he might not have read certain things that had been furnished to him or to his office?
No, Chair, you can't make, knowing how we did the investigation, Advocate Dunia had one case, it was in Taka. He was given an office in Durban, and he only had to do this, as far as I know. I only dealt with him, and this was day to day. This wasn't like I see you next week or next month. This was day to day. So, and he was not the only prosecutor. He had a team of prosecutors. There was no ways that Advocate Dunia will send me this letter, and then me thinking he didn't know what the contents of the case is. That I can never come to that conclusion.
Had the discussions that you had with him prior to him sending you this email, had those discussions included had discussions with him of some of the things that I was asking you for, or that he was asking Mr. White for, so that you say, but I know for sure that he was aware that such and such a report was already with the NPA because we did discuss it. Is it that kind of situation, or is it not that
Chair,
situation?
you can't say that advocate, or a person can't say that advocate Dunya didn't know. You must remember there's a racketeering certificate. There was representations to the NDPP. You don't just get a certificate. It's quite a tedious job. Advocate Dunya, in order to draft the indictment, he had to know the contents or the merits of the case. He had to know the facts. He would have confirmed with us, but he had to know the case inside out. That I know it's quite difficult to get the racketeering certificate because they went more than one to Pretoria
Yes.
to make a proposal to
Yes.
Advocate Simelane. So
this, you just can't understand why he was asking for these things from you and Mr. White.
But besides the point, if you look at the heading, it says, where he informs us who's going to attend to this. Now these role players that had nothing to do with. Advocate Dunya works under Advocate Molotswa, DPP, acting DPP KZN. Advocate Lawrence Mkhwebi is a commercial crime.
National.
Yeah, but national, but commercial crime head. Advocate Mosing, organized crime head. That had nothing to do with my case. And that is why I didn't really understand what's happening now. What are we going to do this for? Because I found it strange that Nadile would send me an email like this, and then I had to bring these things. So I don't know where he got this from, where he got told. I've got no idea. Chair, we'll have to ask him about it.
And you've never had a chance to hear from him why he asked for these things?
Chair, I never, because the meeting that took place, if I continue, you'll understand.
Yeah, I know.
And then I made up my own mind as to what is the reason for this.
From Mr. White's evidence, I think I know how the meeting was handled and the pressure to the restriction on what you could talk about.
That is correct,
Yeah.
Chair. But
Okay.
the thing is that we attended this meeting, chaired by Advocate Mkhwebi, on the 23rd of March 2012. In my statement, I mentioned who was present. Now, if you look at Advocate Dunya Vambani, Advocate Makosi Mtembu, and there was another advocate, I can't remember him, but there's another person present, myself, Colonel Jones, and then Mr. Trevor White. And then there was a two advocate, Mosing and Lawrence Mkhwebi. They came through the door. There was a problem. It was very hot that day, and they couldn't find, either the aircon was not working, and they couldn't find a room where we were going to sit and discuss. And at that stage, we didn't know what's going on. They came, they sit down. It's the first time I met these people. I didn't work in the Scorpions. I didn't know who's Lawrence, Advocate Mkhwebi, or whoever. He introduced himself to us. He said, hello. He said that at some stage, he said, I'm withdrawing against Mr. Mike Maikulu. What evidence we have against Peggy Nkonyeni? He put it straight to the point, not like the invite. The invite didn't speak of that in a way that it happened in that meeting. I just want to maybe explain to you, Chair, that I was also part of the commercial setup. The commercial NPA and investigating officers is what we call prosecutor guided. It's a close relationship in terms of we have our own courts. We have special, we have our own commercial crime courts. It's a much more hands-on, much more personal relationship that you normally have with a prosecutor. They are more involved. They know what we're doing, and it's a better way of dealing with cases because the cases get more attention. That was the whole purpose about this commercial court. This meeting, so if I go to a meeting that was chaired with a prosecutor at the SECU, everybody interact, everybody will have a say, and then eventually there will be a conclusion and what is the way forward. This meeting didn't. This was like, I ask you a question, you tell me what. The prosecutors came in, they sat on my left, I sat next to them. They kept quiet. whether it's by instruction or not. The questions was directed to me because I'm the investigating officer. Mr. White was sitting across the table. And I was trying to explain, now I just want to go one step back. In racketeering, the prosecutors have, as I said, how they're going to approach this matter in court. They have their own strategy. There's certain things they want a court to draw inference on. So they have their own, racketeering in itself has its own benefit in terms of prosecution. I can't say I'm a layman, but I'm not a specialist in the charges. This was in 2011-12, so it's a while ago. And what happened is we did not have the same interaction. The prosecutors kept quiet. We got answered. When Mr. Mkhwebi, he wasn't happy with our answers. I also sort of got a little uptight because this meeting wasn't going well in terms of my view. And at a point, Mr. White said to him, you have to give me ample time so I can prepare. And then I can come and present it over 3 days. Give me 3 days. I'll present the reports to you. You can then go through it. And if we can satisfy your questions that you have. But in a way that this meeting took place, it wasn't. I at some stage said to them, you as the NPA, it's your job to make the decision. Make your decision. I'm not going to be a party to what you're saying here because my prosecutors are keeping dead quiet. They're not interacting, which is unusual for me. And I said, please notify the DPCI and myself in writing what you want to do. Up till today, I don't know what is the reasons for the withdrawal. I don't know why they came there, what was the reasons. The NPA can answer that better. I don't know that. I told Advocate Mkhwebi, maybe not correctly, but I told him, you're just here to tick a box. They will use those words consultation. If they consult with the police, it's fine. Then everybody is happy.
But you were articulating what you were feeling about this whole meeting.
But I wrote a letter to my head, General Moodley. Well, he's now General. He was Brigadier Kubi Moodley in charge of the anti-corruption task team. And I knew I had to explain to General Dramat's office as to why these things took place. Everybody is under the impression there's this racketeering case and now there's withdrawals all of a sudden. But at the stage, the withdrawal didn't take place the next week or the week thereafter. It took some months before it happened. This was a consultation in order to whether we had to persuade them or change their minds, whether they had meetings with the prosecutors before they came into that room, I don't know. He didn't discuss any evidence about Mr. Maikulu, only about Begin Koneni. Chair, so
okay.
I just want to say
yes, Mr. Nicholson, you might be feeling left out right now. you can continue to lead his evidence. Yeah.
Indeed, Chair. Colonel Deploy, you mentioned that at the commencement of the meeting, Advocate Mkhwebi stated that he's withdrawing against Mr. Mbuya Kulu, and he wants to hear about the evidence against Ms. Nkonyeni. Was these charges ever withdrawn?
The charges were withdrawn against the two accused. There was other accused as well, that the charges were withdrawn in High Court.
And the other accused, do you have their names?
But before we get to the point where they are withdrawn, Colonel Deploy, are you done telling me what occurred at that meeting? How did that meeting end?
Chair, maybe I must refer you to PDP 7. I'm not sure. It's page 129.
129.
Yeah. I wrote this letter in 2012, 21st of August, to Brigadier Moodley then. This letter basically explains...
it's addressed to the National Coordinator.
The ACTT stands for, it was an anti-corruption task team that the President put in place in order to address government fraud and corruption.
Okay.
So Brigadier Moodley was the head of that. He was a brigadier. He's now the general today. But he was the head of that.
Okay.
So we had to inform him that we had this meeting, so he's not surprised by if he reads in the newspaper there's these withdrawals. So what happened is Advocate Mugwebi told us what he's going to do. I didn't know, I knew what he was going to do about Mr. Mbaikulu, but he didn't make up his mind or didn't tell us what he's going to do with Peggy Nkonyeni at that meeting, so we left. I then wrote this letter because in the 16th of August 2012, the press then phoned me. I think it was the Mercury, if I read my own paragraph 1 of my letter. And they are saying that there's going to be this withdrawal. So they got a letter, or they got a letter from the accused. They knew there's going to be a withdrawal. I said, I don't know, because we were never formally informed that there's going to be a withdrawal. And on the I'm just looking for a date.
If we can just look at page 129, the first paragraph, you say, if you can just read that paragraph.
Sorry, which paragraph are you referring to?
Page 1, paragraph 1 on page 129.
Yes. This is on the 16th of August, where the press now asking us questions about the withdrawal against certain accused. And they apparently have letters that were signed by the acting director of public prosecutions. I think at that stage, it was the director. I think Advocate Noko was appointed after Advocate. I think this might have been, the word acting should not be. I think it's Advocate Noko. Because Advocate Noko signed letters that was to the accused where it says intention of withdrawal. In other words, the accused knew that the cases against him is going to be withdrawn. Before myself, I've actually asked, when I found out about this, I asked Advocate Dunya, the prosecutor. He said he's not aware of this. He was the lead, he doesn't know about this withdrawal. So he's saying he wasn't informed. So I take his word for that. The NPA also released, in paragraph 2, the NPA also have a press release where the following day, where they're indicating that these charges are going to be withdrawn. And then paragraph 3, I talk about who is it's going to be withdrawn against, which then took place. Subsequently, then the withdrawal took place against those accused, against Peggy Nkonyeni, Mike Mbaikulu, Lendiwe Mkonazi, Pendile, Tusi, and Blose. Those 3 were the Kaboni attorneys that took over from Sandile Kaboni.
The other 4 names that you mentioned Mr. Nkonyeni, Mr. Mbuyekulu, the other 4 names that you mentioned there, were you consulted about the withdrawal of those members?
No.
Of those accused?
No, we only spoke about, the only person that was discussed is Peggy Nkonyeni. He said, I'm withdrawing against Mike Mbaikulu, but the Makonazis and the other 3, not a word mentioned about them. That's my view.
And if we can just return to the racketeering certificate, which is at page 40 of the chair's bundle.
That is correct.
All 6 people that you have mentioned, are they part of this racketeering certificate?
That is correct. They are part of the certificate.
If you can just say where they are.
Accused number 3, accused number 4 is Peggy Nkonyeni. Accused number 13 is Michael Mbaikulu. Accused number 15 is Lendiwe Makonazi. Then accused number 16, Pendela. Accused number 17, Tuse. And accused number 18 is Blose, the 3 attorneys.
Okay. Now you've testified that 3 days were allocated for this matter in court. What's the status of this matter currently?
We have a permanent...
3 months, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I said, you mentioned that 3 months was allocated for the hearing or for the prosecution of this matter. What's the status of this matter presently?
As we speak today, the 5th and the 6th of March is a permanent stay application that's going to be heard in High Court, which Dr. Savoy brought, or Intaka brought. It's going to be argued. I just want to... The main issues that they're raising is, you withdraw charges against Begin Konyeni and Mike Mbakulu, yet you still charge Dr. Savoy for the same things. How does the evidence change? He didn't go away. It's still the same. How does that fit? They want the answer to that, and therefore they say, when the MPA dealt with this issue, they didn't follow their procedures. It's basically an abuse of power. That is what the defense is arguing in their papers. It's going to be heard the 5th and the 6th of March.
Now, if we can just return to the withdrawal of the charges, were you in court when the charges were withdrawn?
That is correct, Chair.
Are you able to say what happened, what transpired in court?
Advocate Dunya stood up. He said, as per my instructions, I'm withdrawing the charges. He didn't say, I, Nadile Dunya, I don't think there's a case, I'm withdrawing. He said, as per my instructions. And then he ended up with saying, as the accused were already notified in writing of the intended withdrawal by Advocate Noko. So he didn't have a choice but to withdraw it because the DPP of KZN already made the decision for him in writing by notifying the accused. And then the charges was withdrawn. He actually placed it on record on the High Court.
Now, you've made the point that ACTT Act was never provided with reasons for the charges being withdrawn. Was the South African Police Services, as the wider body, were they ever provided with reasons for the charges being withdrawn?
Nobody from the investigation side was ever informed of the reasons. So up till today, I don't know what is all the reasons. I've never seen a presentation or representation in terms of why. Chair, if you intend withdrawing charges, and you as a prosecutor will come to me and say, listen, we have to withdraw, or we short the following items or because we need to prove intention or whatever the facts is. We will then see whether investigation can reveal or cover that portions that you are lacking or that you require as a prosecutor to then complete a proper charge sheet or to prosecute. In this case, it's just withdraw and the case sort of go away. We never had the opportunity to fix. If we did something wrong, we never got that opportunity. The other portion as well is that if you withdraw against people, it doesn't mean they can't become a witness, because these people played a role in this, in the actions in terms of how this thing played out. I don't know whether they're going to be called or whether they just disappeared, especially Mr. Maikulu, Begin Konyeni, those people. There was a period that there was a lot of High Court applications. Dr. Savoy and his legal team brought a lot of application, and it was dealt with by the head office, not the Durban office, by the head office of the MPA. And among all those years, I'm talking about 6, 7, this thing started in 2009, so the case is on 11 years, but let's say the last 6 years, I've never heard of the reasons or never given the opportunity to see what can we do to satisfy the NPA, not to withdraw charges. That never happened.
1 second. Yes, Mr. Nicholson.
Yeah. So, if I hear you correctly, the status of the investigation and the withdrawal of the charges, as you've stated it in your, is this a letter or memorandum? This is a letter at page 129. That's your understanding of how the matters were withdrawn and the status of the matters.
Yeah, at that stage, in 2012, that was my understanding of it. That letter I drafted, I actually explained in paragraph 8 who these people are that's going to be withdrawn. If you look at the second page, or page 130, paragraph 8, I actually explain who these people are, because I'm telling my bosses what is the names, but I'm saying to you how they're involved in the matter. And then if you look at paragraph 11 of that same letter, I say there, I had no dealings with the people that withdrew the matter. Up till today, I never met Advocate Norco. I know she was in KZN, I never met her personally. The matter was withdrawn. I never met, I think at the stage the NDPP was Advocate Jiba. I never met her. I don't know. I don't know her. I only dealt with Advocate Malocha, Advocate Nedile, and currently Advocate Vambani is my lead prosecutor with Advocate Nkosi Mtembu. And I just want to use, by way of using an example, Chair, about the relationship that the investigating officer that I had in this matter. The last person that we withdrew the case against was Professor Green Thompson. We went, myself and the two advocates, we consulted various witnesses. We realized that, as they said it then, we were not happy with it as it's now. And if we withdraw against Professor Thompson, we can always put it back later on a roll if there's other issues that was clarified. I was a part of that decision. I played a role as investigating officer. I played a role in that. Not the way that Advocate Mugwebi treated us in that meeting. It wasn't a participating thing in terms of where my prosecutors can come in and say, wait, this is what we decided it in terms of our strategy, or what the prosecutors kept quiet. It's like they got told to keep quiet. And then and when we asked for an extension, let us properly inform you in terms of the facts of the case, the merits of the case. Says, no, I don't have time, my hour is up.
Okay. If we go to just one annexure that we haven't dealt with, is at page 49 of the Chair's bundle, and it goes all the way through to page 125. Are you able to identify the document?
This is the indictment that goes with the racketeering certificate. It was forwarded to me. It's a draft indictment to myself as investigating officer. This is the indictment which they then later on appeared in the High Court for the racketeering charges, the accused.
If we go to page 92, whose name appears there?
A lot of Colonel Duploy's evidence is corroborative. So we might not have to go through everything for purposes of corroboration, because a lot of those things, it's difficult to think anybody would dispute them. But there are those which may well be disputed, and therefore it would be important to cover. So I just mentioned that, you bear that in mind. I'm not saying do this, don't do that, as long as you bear that in mind, because a lot of it, like that meeting that we have talked about, Mr. White talked about it extensively, but it's important to have corroboration for what transpired at that meeting. That's important.
matter. The only person that can actually send him to come and review a case that falls outside of his office is Advocate Jiba, the NDPP.
Who
or
was
the acting
acting
NDPP
NDPP
at the time. Because I think in the NPA Act, there's certain issues that governs in a way that reviews take place. I'm not sure exactly what, but you can't just walk into another guy's office and say, I want to review
unless
your
of
matter.
course, Advocate Mkhwebi and Advocate Musing had gone there with the blessing of the acting National Director of Public Prosecutions.
I don't think Advocate Malotsa would have allowed them
Yes.
to do that if there wasn't a blessing somewhere.
If there was,
If there wasn't a blessing from
Yes,
Advocate
yeah,
Jiba,
so
because
you-
what were they doing there in his space?
yes. So you think there must have been a blessing from the acting, as you see it.
Chair, I can't see that Advocate Mkhwebi wake up one morning and thinks, I'm going to go and check out that Mamego's case and see what's
Yes.
happening there.
Okay.
I don't think it happened like that.
Thank you.
Just one more issue before I conclude. Colonel Deploy, you mentioned that, I want to stay away from the word complainant. The first affidavit in case 1538 of 1/2009, that's a Durban Central case, was obtained from Dr. Savoy.
That's correct, yes.
How did it come about that he reported this matter?
Dr. Savoy made a donation, well, in terms of what he is saying, made a donation to the ANC of 1,053 million. Those monies was paid over into Sandile Kaboni's trust account. Sandile Kaboni issued call it a invoice where he said it's for legal fees. Dr. Savoy then realized that at some stage that, because he claimed VAT on it, he then reported to say, no, I never had any dealings with Mr. Kaboni. So in other words, that invoice for work done is fictitious. He then paid back the VAT in terms of that invoice that covered the donation to the ANC. So what happened is, when he reported it, I think he also got advised that this might be corruption in a way, because the money that was utilized from Kaboni then went to Mr. Shabalala and his wife for their debt. So Advocate Mr. Kaboni, he paid off his, wherever he had debt for his farm, his tractors or whatever. So if you follow the money never, that specific money in terms of as it comes into the bank account and how it was spent, didn't reach the ANC in terms of that million, or that 1,053 million. Dr. Savoy realized it was, I suppose, upon legal advice, and then he reported the matter. So he reported it, I then went back and we took a Section 204 statement from him in Cape Town. So he was going to be our person to explain this from the commercial branch, but not a person for the Scorpions. The Scorpions did their own thing. And then when we merged, it was then decided that Dr. Savoy actually is the main perpetrator in terms of where all the money went, in terms of the procurement portions. That is when we then combined everything, the Northern Cape and KZN.
Okay. Those are my questions, Chair.
I just want to, sorry, I just want to add, Chair, that
Yes.
I finish up here where I say, and this was also one of my problems that I had. There was a submission made to the High Court, and I saw it was like in a statement or what, and I saw that they mentioned that Advocate Dunya is not a prosecutor anymore. And it worried me because he's my prosecutor I'm dealing with. I phoned him, and he said to me, he's still the prosecutor. I said, no, Nadile, you've been removed. There's somebody else now, but it's not you. He then assured me he didn't know about this. So he was removed as prosecutor for the entire matter, KZN. Kimberley had its own prosecutor, but for the KZN matter. That's all, thanks.
So was the position that you thought he had been removed, but actually had not been removed, or was the position that he had been removed, but he didn't know that he had been
That
removed.
is correct, Chair. He didn't know he was not.
He had been
He
removed.
didn't know that, yeah.
And around about when was that, when you had that discussion with him about being removed or not? Do you recall?
I can't recall the date, but it's at the end. Thereafter, he wasn't involved in the matter anymore.
Yes. So in the end, he was not removed. He just didn't know. He was removed, but he
He was
didn't know
removed, but
initially.
he didn't know.
Until
They
you
didn't
called.
tell him, I'm going to remove you.
Yes.
That didn't happen.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Nicholson, if there are important matters that you think haven't been covered and should be covered, feel free to cover them. I don't want you to feel that I restricted you too much. I just didn't want us to cover things that are unlikely to be controversial, especially because our time is precious. But anything that's important that you feel you haven't had a chance to cover, feel free to cover.
Chair, from my side, I've covered everything that I've prepared on.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything else.
Okay. Colonel Deploy, is there something that you feel we have overlooked that you think is important for you to tell me?
No, Chair, that's all I have to say.
You think it's covered?
I think it's covered, Chair.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Colonel Deploy, for coming to give evidence. We appreciate it very much. For now, you are excused.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, the other witness, was only available tomorrow as Advocate Mlochwa, so he will be here tomorrow. I see that we still have some time, but unfortunately there's no other witness.
Yes. How long is he likely to be?
2 hours, not more than 3.
And then do you have somebody else?
There's nobody else.
There's nobody else.
Unfortunately, we had intended calling Advocate Maniati. However, he was only available on the first and on Monday and Tuesday.
Yes.
He wasn't available for the latter part of the week.
Okay, and then arrangements will be made for him to come on another day.
To conclude his evidence, yes.
Yeah. Okay, that should be done without delay, so that we are done with this part of the evidence.
Indeed, Chair.
The reports, Mr. White's report or reports, and whatever reports relate to these matters that emanate from the investigation that Mr. White conducted, do we know whether they have been presented to persons who are implicated and that they have been given an opportunity to indicate whether they seek to give any evidence before the Commission to challenge those reports and that evidence, and whether they seek leave to cross-examine anybody?
As far as I understand, with Mr. Trevor White and this witness, Mr. Trevor White, there was only, I think, two legal representatives who came forward to say that they may do an application for cross-examination.
Yes. There was counsel for. Oh no, I'm thinking of something else. Commissioner Ngobeni.
That's correct. Yes, there was a counsel for that.
Oh yeah.
And there was another counsel here present while Mr. Trevor White testified.
But nobody came who represented, for example, Ms. Gonyeni and Mr. Mabuyakulu, as far as you recall.
If I may just speak to. My understanding is that they have made representations and they have asked for the reports, and they have been given them.
Yes, okay, maybe maybe after we have adjourned, I could be briefed fully on that so that we see what plans need to be made, to hear what they have to say, together with us, anyone else, including people like the HOD for Health, of course Dr. Savoy, and whoever else, so that we know whether, one, they desire to give evidence, they desire to do whatever, or whether they are saying, well, because there is a trial coming, criminal trial coming, we are electing not to challenge the evidence.
Indeed, Chair. What I can say is that we are in the process, because the DS for the 3-3s have expired. We are in the process of writing letters to invite them to make submissions, and then we will make a decision as a legal team if we need to take any further steps.
Okay, but after I've adjourned, please come through so that I can be updated.
Indeed, Chair.
But thank you very much. We are going to adjourn the proceedings for the day, and tomorrow we'll resume at normal time, namely 10 o'clock. We adjourn.
All rise.